I had been living in Washington for the 8 years that I was working, and I was confused. And my husband used to come to Washington every weekend because he was still at a law firm in New York. So sooner or later, I knew I was going to come back to New York. But while I was still in Washington trying to put together all the things that I had saved from working in the administration, I got a call from somebody who said, we'd be interested in knowing whether you would take some time to come to New York and talk to the people at the Rockefeller University about the possibility of becoming the general counsel of the university. Two things. First, I had no clue who this was that was calling me. And second, I'm embarrassed to say, I had no idea what the Rockefeller University was. I had never been involved in science, at least not after my first year in college, where it was clear to me that science was not going to be my job. So I said I'd be happy to see them, but they might be calling my husband, and they just got the wrong place. He was not with me in Washington at that day when they called. And they said, no, we're calling you. And I said, I've never done corporate work in my life. I don't know what it would be like to be somebody responsible for a corporation. But my husband's a corporate lawyer, so I can give you his number. And the woman said, one more time, I'm calling you because the university would be interested in knowing. So I said, sure, if that's really the case, then I would be happy to come to New York. I did come to New York. I was taken to see a number of wonderful people who work at this university. I thought this could be the most interesting thing I've ever done, since it's all science, and it is a spectacular place. It's a spectacular opportunity, and I agreed to take the job. I walked through the gates for the very first time I came here and thought that I had died and gone to heaven, because what a magnificent setting this is for anything that anybody would want to spend her life or his life doing. And I so enjoyed meeting the people who were on a set of lists, who I suppose were trying to decide whether they would be okay with my being the general counsel. And for me, some of the most wonderful people were people who invited me into their labs, had lunch with me, talked about what they were doing. In fact, at the time, Josh Lederberg, second to none anywhere, invited me to his office to talk to him about what he was working on. Unforgettable, always in my recollection, but all the people who are also here and who still are also here made it sound like the most extraordinary possible place to be. But it was hard at the beginning. It was very hard at the beginning, because we hadn't started to suffer what the world now suffers in every day's newspaper, where being some enemy, someone's enemy, had to be taken into account, and thinking about how we could make it better, how we could make things work. But it has been, for me, one of the most extraordinary of all the wonderful opportunities I've had in my life, and continues to be a source of enormous joy and pride to have been here. When I began working here, the president was very kind to me and was very generous to speak with me and to talk about what his aspirations were. But some months after I got here, for reasons of his own, he left the university. We then had a period of time in which one of the people who was the head of the academic council, totally luck, the head of academic council served for a year and a half or so as acting president because when Dr. Levine left, there were no plans that had been made for a new president. So I worked with Tom Sackmar, who I very much enjoyed knowing and working with, and who was very kind to me and was very inclusive. It was nice to know that if you were going to be the general counsel, you wouldn't find out after something happened that it had happened. And Tom made sure that that didn't happen to any of the people who were officers at the university for his period of acting service. The next person who came was Paul Nurse, the lovable, brilliant, self-effacing, pleasant giant of a person. He was the son of a woman who took in cleaning and a husband, her husband, who was a manual laborer. When he was a little boy, they gave him a telescope for his birthday one year. And look at what he's done for the universe since then. He comes back to the university from time to time for meetings, and he never, ever misses a chance to come to my office and give me a hug and tell me hello and how am I doing. He is extraordinary, and his wife Anne was and is also so forthcoming and so easily accessible. It was wonderful to have them here. When he left, it was because he needed to go back to Great Britain because of the position that he'd been offered, and it was staggeringly sad to see him go. But Mark came, and Mark has many, many, many things to be proud of here, and for all of us to be proud of the many things he did. In 2008, when the federal government stopped producing as much money and backup and support as we needed as a university, Mark decided not to just sit and wait and hope and pray that we would get money every time we submitted materials to the government. And he put together extraordinary organizations of partners for us. He opened us to venture capitalists, to various pharmaceutical houses. He connected us with Weill Cornell Medical. He connected us with Memorial Sloan Kettering. And he did all of it with self-effacing grace, kindly, decently, and always with a sense that all of us were in it together, whereas he was clearly, for the period of time that he was here, the person who made it all happen. And he was a wonderful person to work for, and very rewarding and kind and so polite. I don't know if you know what, Mark was different from Paul in the sense that Paul was just out there. He just was out there. Mark told a story on himself that because he's Canadian, he announces that because he's Canadian, he isn't as open as other people. And he described this as he puts his card into the machine to get his tokens or his rides on the bus back, and when the card comes out and he gets this piece of paper, he says to the machine, "Thank you," and walks out. And it is so Mark, and it was so wonderful to have him tell us that story about himself. He was always kind to us, all the officers, and good to us, and a pleasure to work for. But when Stanford called, he left. And here's another simply spectacular, amazing person. He and Deb Lifton have just been like den mother and den father to this university. They're interested in everybody, in what what I was doing when I was here, what everybody else was doing. He is accessible, Deb comes to all the events and she loves it, and she's pitched in the same way that Rick has to be a real member of the community and not just the people at the top. And the university is unbelievably lucky to have both of them here now. It's who he is and who she is too. She is just committed to this place, just totally committed to this place. And she has friends in all the departments. Going deep, deep into the department, she knows everybody on the staff. They are a wonderful couple. Well, it's hard to say because we're a small group. So Deborah Yo is my successor, and she was my deputy general counsel for 15 years, and we are friends, but really friends as well as colleagues. But Terry is here, Terry Solomon. Perry Zelig is here. Perry is new. Terry has been here longer than I was here. And also one of my other dear friends who I saw every day when we came to work, Amy Wilkerson. This crew was so mutually supportive of one another, so happy for one another, so much real friends. We ate lunch together almost every day. It was wonderful to be at jobs that you came to for 12 hours a day, which we all did, which we all do, which they now still do, but managed to have at least 30 minutes of lunch together just to be friends. And that was a beautiful piece of what made this place a great place to be for me.